Hey guys, it's inkybrown again from the Radiohead fan community, and tonight I'm going to be reading to you one of the short stories from the Universal Sigh, which would be on page 4, called Tree Climbing with by Robert MacFarlane. And it says here that Robert MacFarlane is the author of The Wild Places, and above the story is the picture of some trees with the sunlight coming through the woods. And here on Wikipedia it says that Robert MacFarlane was born in Nottinghamshire and is a British travel writer and literary critic. And he's currently a fellow at Emmanuel College, Cambridge, and teaches the Faculty of English at Cambridge. So how cool would that be to have your English teacher one of the authors of Universal Sigh? Okay, so here we go. Tree Climbing by Robert MacFarlane. The wind was rising, so I went to the wood. It lies south of the city, a mile from my home, a narrow, nameless fragment of beechwood topping a shallow hill. I walked there, following streets to the city's fringe, and then field-edge path through hedgerows of hawthorn and hazel. Rooks haggled in the air above the trees. The sky was a bright, cold blue, fading to milk at its edges. From a quarter of a mile away, I could hear the noise of the wood in the wind, a soft marine roar. It was the immense compound noise of friction, of leaf fretting on leaf and branch rubbing on branch. I entered the wood by its southern corner. Debris was beginning to drop from the moving canopy, twigs and beech nuts pattering down into the coppery layer of leaves. Sunlight fell in bright sprees on the floor. I walked up through the wood, and midway along its northern edge I came to my tree, a tall, gray-barked beech, whose branches flare out in such a way that it is easy to climb. I had climbed the tree many times before, and its marks were all familiar to me. Around the base of its trunk, its gray bark has sagged and wrinkled so that it resembles the skin on an elephant's leg. At about 10 feet, there is a branch that crooks sharply back on itself. Above that, the letter H, scored with a knife into the trunk years before, which has ballooned with the growth of the tree. Higher still is the healed stump of a missing bough. 30 feet up, near the summit of the beech, where the bark is smoother and silver, I reached what I had come to call the observatory, a forked lateral branch set just below a curve in the trunk. I had found that if I set my back against the trunk and put my feet on either side of the fork, I could stay comfortable there. If I remained still for a few minutes, people out walking would sometimes pass underneath without noticing me. People don't generally expect to see men in trees. If I remained still for longer, the birds would return. Birds generally don't expect to see men in trees either. Blackbirds fussing in the leaf litter, wrens which whirred from twig to twig so quickly that they seemed to teleport. Once a gray partridge venturing anxiously from cover. I steadied myself in the observatory. My weight and movement had made the treetop rock, and the wind exaggerated the rock, so that soon the summit of the beech was creaking back and forth, describing arcs of 5 or 10 degrees. Not an observatory that day, more of a mast-top crow's nest in a sea swell. From that height, the land was laid out beneath me like a map. Dispersed across it were more fragments of woodland, some of whose names I knew: Mag's Hill Wood, Nine Wells Wood, Wormwood. To the west, over corduroy fields, was a main road, busy with cars. Directly north was the hospital, its 3-piped incinerator tower rising far higher than my hilltop tree. A deep-chested Hercules aeroplane was descending towards the airfield on the city's outskirts. Above a road verged to the east, I could see a kestrel riding the wind, its wings shivering with the strain, its tail feathers flared out like a hand of cards. I had started climbing trees about 3 years earlier. Or rather, restarted, for I had been at school that had a wood for its playground. We had climbed and christened the different trees and fought for their control in territorial conflicts with elaborate rules and fealties. At home, my father had built me and my brother a tree house in the garden, which we had defended successfully against years of pirate attack. In my late 20s, I had begun to climb trees again, just for the fun of it, no ropes, no danger either. In the course of my climbing, I had learned to discriminate between tree species. I liked the lithe springiness of the silver birch, the alder, and the young cherry. I avoided pines, brittle branches, callous bark, and planes, and I found that the horse chestnut, with its limbless lower trunk and prickly fruit, but also its tremendous canopy, offered the tree climber both a difficulty and an incentive. I explored the literature of tree climbing, not extensive but exciting. John Weir had swarmed up 100-foot Douglas spruce during a Californian windstorm and looked out over a forest, the whole mass of which was kindled into one continuous blaze of white sunfire. Italo Calvino had written his magical novel, The Baron in the Trees, whose young hero, Cosimo, in an adolescent huff, climbs a tree on his father's forested estate and vows never to set foot on the ground again. He keeps to his impetuous word and ends up living and even marrying in canopy, moving for miles between olive, cherry, elm, and holm oak. I also came to admire some of tree climbing's serious contemporary exponents, in particular the scientists who researched the redwoods of California and Oregon. Sequoia sempervirens, the giant redwood, can grow to over 300 feet high. Most of that height is branchless trunk. Then comes a flaring crown, dense with branches. These latter-day Spider-Men have developed exceptional techniques of ascent. They use a bow and arrow to fire a pulling line up over a firm branch. This is then used to raise a climbing rope into the tree. Once in the canopy, their rope skills are so great that they can move about safely and almost freely. Up there in that aerial world, they have discovered a lost kingdom, a remarkable and entirely unstudied ecosystem. There was nothing unique about my beech tree, nothing difficult in its ascent, no biological revelation at its summit, nor any honey. But it had become a place to think, a roost. I was fond of it, and I had no notion of me. It had no notion of me. I had climbed it many times, at first light, dusk, and glaring noon. I climbed it in winter, brushing snow from the branches with my hand, with the wood cold as stone to the touch, and real crow's nests black in the branches of nearby trees. I had climbed it in early summer and looked out over the simmering countryside, with heat jellying the air and the drowsy buzz of a tractor audible from somewhere in the vast nearby fields. And I had climbed it in monsoon rain, with water falling in rods thick enough for the eye to see. Climbing the tree was a way to get perspective, however slight, to look down on a city that I usually looked across. Above all, it was a way of defraying the city's claims on me. Anyone who lives in a city will know the feeling of having been there too long. The gorged vision that streets imprint on us, the sense of blockage, the longing for surfaces other than glass, brick, concrete, and tarmac, the need for a wild place of some kind. Tree Climbing by Robert MacFarlane. Sorry guys, my mouse is frozen right now, so I can't stop the video. I've been having this problem lately. After a few seconds, it'll wake up. Oh, there we go. Bye-bye.